well-established firms to miss architectural innovation because they have their own dominant design, and then in their firms they have their own established communication channels, filters, and strategies. And lastly, some of their knowledge are still useful, but others are obsolete, and it's hard to differentiate them. To understand the points further, we must first understand a company's process in developing a new product. So before a new product emerges, there's a period of considerable confusion, which is basically a period where there's no agreement about how a product should be and should be put together, thus encouraging the people to do lots of experimentation. Let's take a look at the automobile industry. Before the emergence of automobile, people just try to do lots of experimentation. Some people may focus on the engine and try to use gasoline, and other people may try to use steam engine, and another may try to use electric. And other people may focus on other things, for example, the body, and use different materials to test out. However, there is a period of the emergence of a dominant design, which is a period when there is a general acceptance of a single product architecture and how the product should be designed. This emergence of dominant design makes the architectural knowledge stable because people don't question it anymore. And established firms usually don't put much of a bother to change the architectural design. Instead, they focus to refine what's already there in order to maximize their profits by winning the competition with other companies. This is one of the reasons why it's hard for companies to take the initiatives to make the change. Next, we need to understand communication channels, filters, and strategies within a company because all three of them reflect how a company managed their architectural and components knowledge when designing a product. For example, if we look at the communication channels, one department may have the regular meeting with another department because the organization thinks that both departments are interconnected. And on the other hand, B department and Z department don't have any meetings together because the company thinks that it is unconnected and unnecessary based on the company's knowledge and experience. Next is the information filters. So as the time goes and as the companies refine their products more and more, its designers started to create a filter of knowledge, which is what they should know and what's what they don't need to know or what's not relevant. An example would be a fan controller designer may think that they need to know about torque and the power of motor, but knows nothing about the materials because they think it's irrelevant. And lastly is a company's strategies. So when a problem arises, instead of trying to find the problem by weighing all the possibilities, a designer in a well-established firm might just focus on trying to solve it based on the ways that was most helpful in solving previous problems. Architectural innovation is dangerous for established companies. When compared to incremental and radical innovation, this type of innovation is not obvious, and it requires many interdepartment communication, which is not very flexible in an already established firm. and some knowledge are still relevant, yet some are already obsolete, which is hard to categorize. To better understand how architectural innovation can disrupt an industry, we are going to take a look at photolithographic aligners case, which is the technology and machine to create intricate patterns on semiconductors. So the process of lithography is quite simple. As shown on the right side, you need to put the wafer, which is usually silicon, and then you need to coat that silicon with a resin, which is a material that's sensitive to light, and then put on a mask on top, and then expose the resist with the light. After the exposure of the resist with the light, the resist will develop, and then you need to put on materials on the gaps between the resist, and next you need to remove the remaining resist, and then pattern formed on the wafer. This simple process is the very basic of the photolithographic evolution, which is what we call the contact aligner technology. This is very simple and easy to use. However, it has a disadvantage, which is that the direct contact can damage the mask or contaminate the wafer. So then they introduced proximity aligner, followed by scanning projection, and then first generation stepper and second generation stepper. We take the case of photolithographic aligners industry because each time the technology changes because of the architectural innovation, the leader always changes too. We are going to start the story from the beginning of the industry, which starts from the contact aligners and the company who made them named Casper Instruments. Casper Instruments itself was a small but profitable company. Their market shares is around half of the total market for contact aligners. However, they were replaced by Canon, who introduced a similar but different type of technology called proximity aligner. They were failed to catch up with Canon, and in the end, the company went bankrupt. As you can see on the left side is the contact aligner, the technology mastered by Casper Industries, where they put the mask and wafer in touch with each other. And on the right side is proximity aligner, the new technology introduced by Canon engineers, where they put the mask and wafer untouched. And although both of the technology looks very similar, but what's important in each one of them is different. For example, in contact aligner, the precision and accuracy of the wafer and the mask is natural since they both touch each other. But in proximity aligner, the gap between the mask and the wafer must be precise and consistent because they are not in touch with each other, so it must be aligned perfectly. And thus, the relationships between the gaps and also the other components will change too. Casper failed because they failed to understand which important knowledge must be used. They see proximity aligner as another incremental innovation, and even they judge Canon's design as a copy of their own. Thus, when they make proximity aligner, they only modify a little of their established design, failing to understand that their architectural knowledge is obsolete, and when they encounter a problem, they treat it as if they would for contact aligners. The same happens in 1980s with a company named Perkin-Elmer. They were the leader in making photolithography industry at the time with their scanning projection technology, but they were replaced by GCA company who introduced the first stepper technology. Again, they failed to recognize the importance to improve the components and also the interaction between each components. And they also proclaimed GCA's products as a copy of Perkin-Elmer's. Lastly, the case of GCA, after they took the throne from Perkin-Elmer, they were once again replaced by another company named Nikon. Same as the other two cases, GCA claimed that Nikon's innovation was a copy of their own. But then they realized that Nikon's products were superior. But then GCA was handicapped by their own established knowledge, channels, filters, and strategy and failed to catch up with Nikon's technology. So there are several conclusions from this presentation. The first one is that architectural innovation both enhances and destroys competence, often in subtle ways. That's why it's really hard to detect an architectural innovation. And firms must pay a close attention to innovate the architecture of a product. However, it's hard, and the firm may require a different kind of organization to realize it. Thank you for listening to my presentation.